So Alabama's got a big game with Arkansas this weekend. Who are the 5 players that you really need to keep an eye on? We know about Bryce Young. We know about Will Anderson, but who else?
Are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Good. That's a catchy song we got to start this show.
And I'm telling you.
Good. It gets me in the mood.
As the kids say, it's slapping. This broadcast is brought to you by BetOnline. I'll tell you about BetOnline and Alumni Hall in just a little bit. Today, Jimmy, one thing we want to talk about in this podcast are the 5 players that we really need to keep an eye on for this game. Let's take Bryce Young out of the equation. And I'm basing this off of an article that came from your good folks over at On3. And they actually included Will Anderson. I'm going to take him off the list. I think Will Anderson is a guy you watch every game for any reason. I mean, he's just awesome. And so is Bryce Young. So I think it'd be best to come up with other people that aren't those 2. Now, the first thing, before we get into any of that, and I want to get into that quickly, I found a picture side by side on Twitter. I don't even know who to give the credit to, so I apologize if you are a loyal listener to this podcast. I should give you credit. Side by side picture of Robbie Outsz. I always forget it. Robbie Outsz, when he was at Alabama in 2021, and now when he's at Alabama in 2022. I'm putting it up now. The one on the left looks like he is the nephew of the one on the right, who is the black sheep of the family. Does he not?
I mean, I prefer the look on the right. And I say that just simply because that's a baller there. That's a baller. You got to, if you're going to look like that and play ball, you got to be a baller. I mean, you can't just look like that and just be just any other guy. So hopefully Robbie can bring some game with that stash.
I mean, I feel like he's the kind of guy who might say, I can throw a football over them their mountains.
He reminds me a little bit. I wonder if he's a giant Braves fan like myself. The Braves have a pitcher that everyone is excited to see every time he goes out there named Spencer Strider. He looks like an old Western gunslinger with this mustache, and a lot of Braves fans wear fake mustaches to the games when Spencer Strider pitches. I think that might be the look that Outsz is going for there. Maybe he's a big Spencer Strider fan.
He looks like he went into the witness protection program at Panama City.
I mean, you wouldn't really know it's the same guy. I mean, that's a radically different look. I mean, they look radically different. And, hey, Outsz started the season as a starting tight end, and then look at all that's happened in his position. He starts because Latu's out, right? So now Latu is back, and you think, well, Outsz goes from starter to number 2. Not so fast, as Corso says, because now they've moved Kendall Randolph back. So now Kendall is actually the number 1 blocking tight end off the bench and not Outsz. And whoa, here comes Amari Nablack. Nablack is now like the number 2 receiving tight end off the bench. So now really Outsz is probably 4th, and I still think the guy's a pretty good player. He just needs some more experience and some work. Gave up a sack in that Texas game, probably set him back a little bit, at least mentally. But he might be the number 1 tight end next fall. We'll see.
Okay. But I wonder if he'll have a new look next year. Interesting. Okay. Let's go to the top 5 players. Now, again, the top 5, and I like where they're starting on 3. This is Clint Lamb's article. He does a magnificent job. He's a cohort of yours. His number 1 is Jase McClellan. I like that a lot. I think that's a great pick. I think Jase McClellan has been very good so far. I mean, he hadn't, been freshman All-American, but he's been really, really good. And I think he is moving up the charts in terms of important players on this roster very, very quickly. But according to Clint Lamb's article, he says, and according to Pro Football Focus, Arkansas has 1,029 rushing yards this season. Of that total, 608 have come between the B gaps, which are the gaps between the guards and tackles. That accounts for 60% of the rushing yards. For comparison, only 43% of Alabama's rushing yards have come between the guards. So what that means is Alabama's tackles, like Jase Otis, are going to have to be a kind of a big deal this weekend.
Yeah, Arkansas runs the ball really well. Rocket Sanders, number one rusher in the league in terms of carries and in terms of yards. I made a little error on Otis this week, and I really studied the defensive, stat chart. I wanted to take a kind of a deeper dive into who's been accumulating numbers. And I knew from watching the games as closely as I do more than once that Jase Otis had played really, really well. I've been very excited about the way Otis has played. I think he's been fantastic off the top of my head. I think he's been our third best lineman behind Byron Young and Justin Boybe. I think Otis is third in terms of like who's been the most effective, who's been really good. But I looked at that defensive chart, and it's just a fact that Otis really hasn't been credited with many tackles, and sacks and tackles for loss has just not been his thing. He hasn't made a lot of those or hardly any of those. So I put down, instead of me basically saying, hey, production-wise, I said, he needs to step it up. And that was probably an error on my part. If I had to do that article over again or that post over again, I got to take into account that he plays a position where it's just the hardest position on the team to accumulate stats. And the fact of the matter is, who has accumulated stats? Toho, Moody, Lawson. All three of them have. Lawson ain't even playing a lot of snaps, and he's accumulated a lot of numbers. Not to mention Will Anderson, of course. But Otis's job when he's in there is to disrupt and blow things up. And then the quicker dude gets to the ball carrier and makes the play. I think a lot of these tackles that Henry Toho have been making, and Deontay Lawson and Jalen Moody have been making, a lot of those tackles is because Jase Otis has cleared a path so the linebacker can get directly to the ball carrier. And that's where I messed up, not giving Otis that credit, because for a fact that's been happening. Otis has been taking up two blockers. He's been blowing things up. He disrupts the play. The play's supposed to be in the A gap. Otis blows up the A gap. Running back's got to move to the B gap. And who's there? Number 10, number 42, number 32. I mean, so Otis has been really good, and I needed to give him more credit than I did. I focused too much on the literal stat numbers.
That's very big of you.
It's the only big thing I do. I'm 5'8", if that.
Let me tell everybody about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all football betting this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcast, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on your favorite games, events, including MLB, NFL, Major League Soccer, whatever you want. They got it, MMA, boxing, golf. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, so let's continue with this list here. 5 most important players for this weekend, not including Bryce and Will. Now, they have number 2 at Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay. I can see that. I would make a swap here. I'm going to go Jase McClellan. I think Jase McClellan is the better running back. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is the better all-around player. I'm fine if you want to go Gibbs here. Let's at least do Gibbs/McClellan, because I think eventually we're going to have to establish some kind of a running game in some game. It's going to have to happen. And I think this would be a nice game to do it. I would especially like to do it considering it would be the passing defense unit on Arkansas is so atrocious. And this is not Luke talking like a Bammer. This is statistically, I'm correct here. In fact, I saw something yesterday where if you account for all the FCS and FBS, Arkansas would still be one of the worst pass defenses in the country. I mean, that's that's a crazy stat. So I feel like we'll be able to get all the passing we want, again, which I'm fine with because I love Bryce Young and I want our receivers to develop all this chemistry. But there's part of me that goes, hey, let's kind of force our running game on them too, and let's show the world that we can do both again.
I like it. I do like it. Obviously, what does Alabama do best? We throw the football. I think that's what Alabama does best in offense, throwing the ball in the short to intermediate passes. That's what this team is doing best. And when you look at Arkansas defensively, statistically, what does Arkansas do worst? Defend passes. So I think the game plan here is obvious, but they know this. They're aware. This is not a secret. And it's not just because they watch the podcast, and I'm sure they do because they're very smart and they think we're hilarious. So I'm sure Arkansas watches the podcast, but they're well aware that Alabama is going to come into this game with the idea that we're going to throw it 40, 50 times. So while they're busy preparing for that, it would be a good time to spring a few runs on them because I do think we have the backs to do it. Clint specifically listed Gibbs here. You say Jase because you say that Jase is better at running back. The thing is, I agree with both of y'all. Here's it's just one of the weird anomalies so far. I would tell you Jahmyr Gibbs, taking Bryce out of the equation, which we already did. Take Bryce out of the equation. Jahmyr Gibbs is the best offensive player on this football team. I believe that. I think Gibbs is our best player on offense. But is he the best running back? No, I think Luke may be right here. I think Jase McClellan may be the best running back on the team. Oh, so I must be saying that Gibbs is our best receiver, even though he doesn't play. No, I don't think that he is. Actually, I think he hadn't proven it to us just yet, but I think Jermaine Burton's the best receiver on this team right now. But Gibbs is the best. So it's so weird. Gibbs, our best player. I'm not sure he's the best running back or the best receiver, but he's the best player. And I think Gibbs is also the best bet to make big plays. And by the way, Clint himself made a point that wasn't in that article, but this is Clint's point, so I guess I should give him credit. When we went on the road week 2, who do we throw the ball to most? Gibbs. Who caught the only touchdown pass? Gibbs. Who had the most touches? Gibbs. I can see us going on the road and being pretty Gibbs-centric again because I know we trust that guy.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I do love the idea of forcing Bumper Pool, by the way, coolest name ever, or Drew Sanders to potentially cover Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield versus laying the lumber to Bryce Young at some point because I don't want Drew Sanders will knock your teeth back in your watch pocket. I mean, he will slap the bejesus out of you. So you can't. You know what I hope?
I hope we need to force Drew to cover our backs because I do remember while Drew was okay at that. I remember famously when he was a true freshman, he gave up a wheel route to Missouri in the opener when he was a freshman. I think we need to force Drew to be a pass defender, and that would be a good matchup for us. I like that. It also occurred to me, this is as soon as you said Bumper Pool, Drew Sanders' nickname is Drago, like the boxer in Rocky IV, that's his nickname. So that's pretty cool that the Arkansas linebackers are Bumper and Drago.
I mean, what's next? They got a defensive lineman named Skee Ball.
I'm just saying if there's a podcast about football and the hosts are Bumper Pool and Drew Sanders and it's the Bumper and Drago show, I'm listening.
I'm listening to that.
Yeah.
I'm listening for fear they're going to beat the crap out of me.
They are good players, man. Arkansas, I like Sam Pittman so much, but hey, you know what? They're missing a Catalan, that safety. He's out. Yeah. Man, what a player that guy is. And they're also have lost a starting cornerback for the season. Hey, I think maybe this is the game Alabama's vertical gets vertical. This game is just screaming for the run game. And I brought up the Cincinnati game on our last show. That game screamed the opposite. That game was like, hey, we can run the ball with Brian Robinson. And Cincinnati stats were like, we'll give up some run yards. And what did we do? We went in that Cincinnati game with a different game plan than we had all year long. We're just like, hey, we're going to give this ball to Brian Robinson until you stop it. And they never really did. I think it's the same thing here at Arkansas. It's just throwing it. I mean, they don't defend it well. It's what we do best. And I think we're going to do it a lot. But the beauty of that is, hey, throw it. Then you slip in your run. And with Gibbs and McClellan, hey, that can be a big play.
Okay, the next guy on the list is Brian Branch. I think that's a good call. I will say this, I'm a little shocked. Arkansas's got like 960 yards passing on the season, or 940. I mean, I was kind of shocked they have that many yards passing. It doesn't seem like they do, but they do. They've got Jadon Hazelwood, who's he was a former 5-star at Oklahoma, transferred in. He's a pretty good receiver. He hadn't lived up to his 5-star billing, but again, he has the reputation, at least from high school, to be very, very good. And Brian Branch is on that list. I like the idea of Brian Branch. I think he's played great this year. I think that's a good choice.
Yeah, I like it. Branch has played really well. He's been one of our best defenders. Sort of in that hybrid, the nickel corner position. It's a little bit like a corner, but it's also an in the box position. He's lined up close to the line of scrimmage. We blitz some with Branch. He's effective at that. He can make a big play, kind of a bigger kid. I mean, he's not built like a corner. He's built more like a safety. One thing about KJ Jefferson too, you might hit him, but that don't mean you get him to the ground. Big, strong guy. But so you need backs like Brian Branch that can hit KJ Jefferson and get him to the ground. I do think he can be a critical defender. I also like, he's not going to be on this list, but I'll tell you what, we do have a linebacker that is built for the spy game. The inside linebacker that you put out there is like, hey, where KJ goes, you go. If he's running the RPO, you go hit him. If he drops back, you go after him. I mean, you follow him around and you hit him as many times as you can. That's Deontay Lawson. And Lawson's a big kid. He can run with KJ Jefferson. He can defend the pass. If you have to drop him, he can go get the passer. I think this is a game, Luke, where we may see more Deontay Lawson than we've already seen in the first 4 games. I just think he's sort of built for that role.
I'm with you on that. Jimmy, I need to go ahead and take a break now and tell everybody about Alumni Hall. Go to Google Alumni Hall, Alabama. But look, here's a picture of some of the stuff. Look at all the stuff they've got, this Alabama stuff at Alumni Hall. I mean, that's awesome. Now, if you're listening on audio, you don't see it, but trust me, they got everything you need. They got hats, they got shirts, they got cornhole boards, they got some other little stuff I can't really make out right there. They got little fire pits. Here's another
fire pit. Yeah, fire pit's cool as heck.
Hey, look at all these shirts they have. And look, you want to go to Alumni Hall, Midtown Village, 1800 McFarland Boulevard East, Suite 504, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Go check them out. You can also just give them a call if you need to, 205-523-7562. That's Alumni Hall. They got everything you want Alabama-wise. I'm telling you, it's a cool website. But you can also just Google Alumni Hall, Alabama. Go to their website. You can order some stuff online. But if you're in Tuscaloosa, coming up shortly, like this big A&M game coming up in about a week and a half, swing on over to Midtown Village. Go get you some of this cool Alabama stuff. We've already had a couple of people comment, say they've been to Alumni Hall, bought some Alabama stuff because we recommended it. Appreciate y'all so very much. Thank y'all. And I know Alumni Hall thanks y'all, but they've been a great sponsor. They're a great store. Trust me on this. I bought some stuff there even before they became a sponsor. That's how I know I like them.
I must have 6 shirts from Alumni Hall that I bought before they were sponsors. Great. And if they had a bar, I would just hang out there.
Oh, it'd be Alumni Hall closed bar and grill. That'd be amazing.
I would never leave. I would just turn on the games, drink my beer, stare at their stuff.
And when my clothes finally got dirty, I just buy some more clothes and put them on.
Yeah, so never have to wash again. And then if you're getting married, register there.
That is a good point. All right, Jimmy, let's talk about these final 2 guys. Now, look, they have Will Anderson as one of them. I'm going to take Will Anderson off my list, and I'm going to save my last person, but they have Tyler Steen as their number 4 guy. Mm-hmm. Look, how has Tyler Steen done this year, do you think? Now, here let me throw this in there. Arkansas has 3 of the top 5 players in the SEC in sacks on their squad. I mean, that's tough, man. I mean, that's tough. So our offensive line is, they're going to have their work cut out for them. They haven't played a pass defending offensive line as well as Alabama yet, obviously, but they get after you, man. Drew Sanders comes after your butt. And they also hadn't played a quarterback who's probably as elusive in terms of avoiding sacks as good as Bryce Young is. But that's kind of scary to me. How do you feel like Tyler Steen has done this year in the transfer from Bama?
Good. Good. Hey, this is what I wanted out of him. I guess we have fans that are like, they just see the jersey and the position and they assume they're all alike. So Tyler Steen is just this year's Evan Neal. I don't know how those fans get through life. Every player is different in terms of strengths and weaknesses. I mean, we were gonna take a step back at left tackle, and it's what made the offensive line projection so interesting this year, Luke, is how do we get better when we're losing our best player, But to me, Steen didn't have to be as good as Evan Neal for the offensive line to be better. He had to be better than last year's right tackle. He had to be solid. He didn't have to be a leak. He needed to be somebody that the other team couldn't pick on, that, hey, he's pretty good. He's adequate. The fact that he was a player of the week last week is huge. Selected by the staff. I think Steen has been good. And that's all we needed him to be. Is he Evan Neal? Of course he's not Evan Neal, but he's been good. The right tackle has been good. Frankly, he's been even a little bit better than good, in my opinion, especially when you factor in his youth, and he's just going to be getting better and better. I'm impressed with the offensive line. Now, I might be taking all this back next week because this Arkansas matchup up front is a tough matchup, and it's a real good look at where Alabama's offensive line is. I'll say this. I expect Alabama's offensive line is going to impress people that sort of know what they're watching. Now, is Arkansas going to have people hit Bryce? Yeah. Is Bryce going to be under some duress? Yeah. It's football. We're playing a good team. But it doesn't mean that individual members of our offensive line are getting physically beaten or physically whipped consistently. I don't think we're going to see that Saturday. I even went so far to say this week, Luke, I think I'm getting sold on this offensive line. I think by the end of the year, this offensive line is a team strength, particularly in pass protection.
Okay, and my final, again, on 3 had Will Anderson. I think that's cheating. I'm going to go with Tyler Harrell or JoJo Earl, and with the caveat that I don't know if either one of them is actually going to play yet.
Yeah, we don't know.
If one of them plays –
I bet JoJo plays, but I don't know that.
If one of them plays, I think they're one of the most important players in this game.
I agree.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No. I agree totally. I think, JoJo is the best slot receiver we have on the team. And with JoJo out of the lineup, we've had to play Jermaine Burton some at slot. We've had to play Trayshawn Holden at slot receiver. And, of course, they're veteran guys. They've been around. They know the position. They can line up there and run all the right routes, and they're doing the right things. But they're not slot receivers. They're something else. It's kind of like, hey, here's a perfect basketball example. Your combo guard, your 2-guard, or your combo guard. Hey, can he play the point? Well, yeah. He knows all the plays. He can play point. He can get you in the right play call. He's a pretty good passer. He's a pretty good ball handler. But to me, I think that point guard position is sacred. You are either a point guard or you are not. And it's not that extreme at wide receiver. But the fact of the matter is, the only guy we've run out there that's really a slot receiver is probably Kobe Prentice, who's played now all of 4 games in his life in big-time football. So we have really missed JoJo Earl. And not only will JoJo show up and be our best slot receiver by far, now we don't have to play Burton inside. We don't have to play Holden inside. They can play the positions that they play best, which is outside. So I think JoJo's return is huge. and it's very realistically could happen based on the practice footage that we saw released from the university. JoJo looked pretty healthy to me. I would bet we see him Saturday, but I don't know that.
All right, everybody. Again, thank y'all so much for listening and watching and all that. We really do appreciate you. I swear we do. Keep the comments coming. Even if you disagree with us, we're fine with that. People tell us we're wrong all the time. We're both married.
Yeah, I said catapult surgery the other day, and a couple people listening to the show have let me know about it. And by the way, thank you for people who corrected me nicely. I didn't mean to catapult surgery. Catapult's that stuff they wear in their pads that let you know how fast. It's tightrope surgery that you get with the high ankle sprain. I know this. But I'm an old man.
You did say catapult surgery, and it was, I was so unsure. Like I'm so unsure. I'm so self-conscious that I was like, maybe he's right. That doesn't sound right at all, but maybe he's right. I got to work on my self-confidence so I can correct you more often.
It's like Uncle Leo on Seinfeld said when show up. Oh man, I was confused.
Or Eddie Murphy when, in Raw, when he said, when a woman catches a man cheating on him and he goes, it wasn't me. Just keep saying it wasn't me.
Wasn't me.
And then eventually he goes, maybe it wasn't you. That's what I was like. Maybe it's not tightrope surgery. Maybe it is catapult surgery, which makes no sense because if you catapulted it.
That would be a crappy surgery.
That would just listen. Yeah, I've got bad news.
How are you getting this tumor out of me?
I got good news and bad news. We can fix this, but we're going to have to shoot you to the next county. So, all right. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We appreciate you. And roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.